بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. عظم الله أجرنا وأجركم بمصابنا أبا عبد الله الحسين Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam. Dearest respected brothers and sisters, viewers from around and across the world, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the After Maghrib Podcast. On behalf of the whole team here and of course the entire team at Ahlul Bayt TV, we wish you condolences on the tragic demise, the anniversary of the martyrdom of the master of the youth of paradise, Imam Hussain alayhi salam, who gave his life to the cause, the deen of Allah SWT on these days over 1,400 years ago. Dearest respected brothers and sisters, our condolences begin also extended to the holy awaited Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, who of course we commemorate these days for. We reflect on the days of Al-Hussein alayhi salam in order to prepare for Al-Mahdi, Ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif. And with the view in mind that inshallah these coming days, these episodes inshallah which we will engage in with together with yourselves will be for the sole purpose to reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to understand the message of Al-Hussein alayhi salam, and inshallah to apply it to our own lives in preparation for the awaited Saviour and his holy awaited return. Brothers and sisters, inshallah over the coming weeks you will see more content on After Maghrib, which engages your minds, your hearts and your souls. We'll try and understand and assess different aspects of the journey of Imam Hussain alayhi salam from Mecca to Karbala, and then of course from Karbala to Kufa and Sham between now and of course the day of Arba'in. As always, Sayed Ali and I will be joined by different guests, different speakers, different reciters, and at times it will be the two of us reflecting as well. As always, we respect and we appreciate your participation. That could be in the form of comments on YouTube, on social media, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, and as always we appreciate those who've gotten in touch to give suggestions, to give us guidance as to how we can improve, feedback as to who they'd like to see on the podcast, and of course what they'd like to see being discussed. As always, I'd like to begin by welcoming my reliable and my beloved co-host Sayed Ali Radhawi. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid. How are you doing, brother?
Alhamdulillah, well, it's hit home that we are in the month of Muharram. So, Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal, I would say that.
Absolutely, Sayyid. The holy month has come. It feels like something we anticipate throughout the whole year. It feels like we've been talking about Imam Hussain alayhi salam for the whole year, and now Muharram is here. Because we reflect on his message, and it seems to be a theme in our discussions that we always find the connection between the journey of the Holy Imam and everything else. Every other discussion, every lesson we learn somehow links back to Karbala or can be found in Karbala. And now we're finally here and it's crunch time.
Yeah, Muharram's here, and it's a time where a lot of the lovers of Imam al-Hussain, lovers of Rasool Allah, the lovers of Fatima Zahra await this month. Because it's not just a month where we wait because, for example, we want to beat our chest, or a month where we just want to listen to a musab, and there's more to it. There is this connection that we have directly with Imam al-Hussain alayhi afdal salatu wasalam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, there's a narration that I remember growing up I've heard where he says, surely for the martyrdom of my grandson Hussein, there is a flame in the hearts of the believers that will never fade away. And this is what it's all about. What I'm trying to say is that, as much as we want Muharram to come, as much as we want, there's a reason behind it. And inshallah, we are those flames that are ignited in the love of Imam Hussain.
Inshallah. And it feels like Karbala and Ashura are historic in the sense of a landmark event which changed the course of history, both at the time it happened and of course afterwards. But what I find really interesting is, and I think maybe it's a good place for us to start, is Karbala being foretold by the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know, of course, the story of Bibi Salama alayhi salam. And for those who don't know, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to kind of summarize the story.
Do.
But one of the many miracles of the Holy Prophet Muhammad was that he was able to foretell and foresee what was to happen to his grandson, Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And this was done through the angel Jibra'il. So we know, of course, from narrations that Jibra'il brought down the dust of Karbala and he presented it to the Holy Prophet Muhammad. And he told the Holy Prophet Muhammad that this dust is from the land of Karbala, which will turn into blood on the day your grandson is murdered and martyred. Then, of course, the Holy Prophet presents this to his wife, Salama, of course, who is highly revered and respected both in the school of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And hadith narrations tell us that Salama kept this dust in a pot or in a jar for around 50 years, over 50 years. And when eventually Imam Hussain was martyred and the dust turned into blood, she, of course, was one of the first, if not the first, to leave her house and proclaim to the people about the martyrdom of Al-Hussain alayhi salam. And this is one of the most fundamental proofs that we have that Karbala was a moment of spirituality and a moment of divinity. It wasn't merely a political battle, and it wasn't merely a dispute between two parties over the small matter of bay'ah or allegiance, but rather it was something which the Holy Prophet knew was to happen, and of course was something that was foretold through the permission of Allah SWT. So yeah.
If I can just elaborate on the story that you mentioned. And we know the narrations, there are some narrations that go in a bit deeper to that point.
Yeah.
Where they say, before Jibra'il gave the soil of Karbala to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he first narrated how Imam al-Hussein will be killed. And he didn't just tell him, I'll bring you the soil of Karbala. No, the exact location of where the sacred head of Imam al-Hussein will be severed, like that exact point. And Rasulullah, with tears flowing down his cheeks, this is him narrating it to Salama, that he asked Jibra'il to bring it to him. And Jibra'il did do so. And after doing that, what does he tell Salama? Now, this is, for me, this is the most interesting bit about everything here, is that he says, those that will kill my grandson Hussein are those who claim to be from my ummah.
Sahih.
So that goes to show you, as much as we can say we are Muslim, or people rule in the name of Islam, in the name of Rasulullah, okay? Rasulullah is saying a very vital point here, that my son Hussein is on the path of haqq, and for him to claim those who will kill him claim to be from my ummah means they're on the side of falsehood.
Yeah.
So Karbala is like, if I can say it to you very truly and honestly here, there is more to it than just his martyrdom.
Yeah.
There is truth, and we love the truth. Muslims yearn the truth. And for us to see closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God wants us to be on the path that is truth. And for me, that is the most beautiful thing from that narration that you mentioned. I will never forget that. Because, as I said, anyone can claim that they can be Muslim. But when Rasulullah says they claim to be from my ummah, that is a big statement to reflect on.
And there is incredible amounts of hypocrisy found within the Battle of Karbala. And like you said, of course, these people who claim to be from the ummah of the Holy Prophet are the ones who ended up martyring him.
Yeah.
There's a hadith from Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, if I'm not mistaken. And he narrates that the most hurtful day for the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was when his uncle Hamza was killed on the Battle of Uhud. The second most hurtful day was when his cousin Ja'far ibn Abi Talib was martyred on the day of Mu'tah. And then he goes on to say, وَلَا يَوْمَكَ يَوْمًا
لَا يَوْمَكَ يَوْمَكَ يَا أَبَا عَبْدِ اللَّهِ. There is no day like your day.
There's no match for Ashura. There's no match for Karbala. And then the Imam continues to say, he says, 30,000 soldiers were mobilized against him, claiming that they are part of this ummah, while seeking nearness to Allah. While Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam was giving dhikr and reminding them about Allah, and his goal was to enjoin good and forbid evil. And of course, they murdered him sinfully and wrongfully. And you begin to understand that hypocrisy has existed since the beginning of Islam. And it was found no more clearly and visibly than in the plains of Karbala. And if we understand that in its purest form, truth can be found in Karbala and falsehood can also be found in Karbala, then we begin to develop a litmus test for what is haqq and what is batil. And I think if I want to ask you, of course, but I think a really important place for us to start before we begin these series of coming podcasts is why the Holy Imam actually went to Karbala. What did he have in mind? What was his goal? What was his mission? What was his objective? And was it purely just to stand up to Yazid? Was it, to fight against oppression and all these things? Or was there something deeper?
No, so Imam Hussain alayhi salam, very famously, when he embarked on his journey towards Karbala, that wasn't his intention. As in his final destination was not to go to Karbala, was to go to Kufa. And, he was answering the requests that were coming in from the people in Kufa who wanted Imam al-Hussein to come and sort out the mess that the rule had on them as Muslims during that time. And, some people's hearts changed. I don't know, I'll be honest with you, I don't know the full reason as to why so many betrayed Imam al-Hussein after signing those requests of him coming and they pay allegiance to him. But I guess that's part of Allah's plan, I can say. The fact that he ended up in Karbala, and why he went there, and I've said it on many previous other podcasts, and I'll reiterate it, and I keep saying it all over again. Imam al-Hussein, alayhi afdal as-salati was-salam, a point from what you mentioned earlier, he was there to enjoy good and forbid evil. But he went there to revive the teachings of his grandfather Muhammad, Rasool Allah SWT. Because look, I'll be honest, if Imam al-Hussein didn't go to Karbala, and if Ashura didn't happen, and as brutal as it sounds, if Imam al-Hussein's head was not raised on the spear, we won't have the Islam of Rasool Allah, we'll have the Islam of Yazid and Muawiyah. Let's be honest about this. Because, the party of Yazid and his army, they also prayed on Ashura. I've read that they also done Salah. But the difference is, Imam Hussein's camp, they didn't attack them during Salah. Whilst the camp of Imam Hussein, when they were praying, the army of Yazid were firing arrows. Whilst Imam al-Hussein is establishing Salah. And it shows you a very clear image. And it's as clear as day. If you read the Maqatil, and if you read the historic narrations of the entire battle, is that, and this is the most beautiful thing that I found about this very recently, is that whenever Imam al-Hussein had the opportunity to himself, which was very rare, it was always in supplication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every moment possible for him, even when facing the enemy, even when addressing the enemy soldiers that want to kill him, that are here to take the blood of Imam al-Hussein, he will remind them of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he would tell them, you still have an opportunity to change. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will still forgive you should you come to the path of truth. Like, look at the mercy of Allah, even at that final, although these soldiers have come out to kill Hussein, finish him off and his family, Imam Hussein is still telling them, Allah will forgive you if you change sides. Yani, go on, sorry.
No. It's the passion you're speaking with is completely true. And it's important for us to understand that the Holy Imam, in his initial offset, when he left and headed towards Iraq, modern day Iraq, we know from his will to Muhammad ibn Hanafiya that he repeats again and again and again and again the vision for al-haq.
Yes.
And haq is the defining and the ultimate goal of the Imam. When we say, for example, many of the phrases we use today when we transmit and translate the message of the Holy Imam to non-Muslims, we say the Imam stood against oppression. We say the Imam fought for justice. We say the Imam stood against the dictator of his time. Many of these concepts today are relative. They are subjective. They're not objective. Because in a day and age where people misgender each other and where you have different concepts of morality and different concepts of halal and haram and haram and halal, it becomes pointless to say this guy was an oppressor because to someone else he may be a freedom fighter. But what is objective, what will never change, is God's law. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and al-haq, and you're talking about islah ad-din,
Yeah.
the reformation of the religion of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. This is something that is timeless, is non-malleable. It can't be changed, amended, added to, or removed from. And the idea was that the Holy Imam continued this in his pursuit of finding haqq. There's, from, if you don't mind, from the will of the Holy Imam to Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah. And it's interesting that he wrote this will, knowing, of course, that he was going to lose his life. But he says, I have not taken up arms in order to make merry or for entertainment, or to be ecstatic over what I possess. I'm not making mischief, nor am I exercising oppression, but I am ready to fight for the sole goal of seeking reformation of the Ummah of my grandfather, the Apostle of Allah. I want to enjoin good and forbid evil and guide the affairs of the people as my grandfather and my father Ali ibn Abi Talib were doing. One who accepts me with truth, the Almighty Allah is more deserving for truth, and one who objects against me, I shall be patient on it, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may judge between me and these people. He is the best of judges. This is obviously a short excerpt from the will of the awaited from the Holy Imam. And it's interesting to understand that haqq was the defining factor for the Imam. And if the Imam, Hussain minni wa ana min al-Hussain, if the Imam says this, in retrospect, that means the Holy Prophet would have said the same thing. And if he's saying, I am with haqq and those who are against me are with falsehood, then there's no dispute. It should be clear as day to understand.
No, you're very right. And it's a very important point that you just raised, is that when the Imam is talking, Rasulullah is talking.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when we come to the Ahlul Bayt, our holy Ummah, our 12 Imams, there has never been a single contradiction with their grandfather Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's clear, and the teachings are the same. So if we want to say, you know, who has the correct sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, are the Ahlul Bayt.
Yeah.
Without shadow of a doubt. Because, you know, Yazid, let's go back, being Ashura, let's bring up Yazid for a moment. Okay? Yazid claimed to be Amir al-Mu'mineen of his time. He claimed to be the rightful, caliph at the time to rule the Muslim Ummah in the name of Muhammad, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ultimately in the name of Allah. And the beautiful difference that it's so clear to everyone is that you cannot mistake haq and batil here.
Yeah.
Because you have a man like Yazid, who historically narrated everywhere was openly a fasiq.
Yeah.
He would openly
Absolute
sin.
sinner. Yeah.
He was an adulterer. On top of that, he used to lead salah prayers in the state of drunkenness. He was drunk and leading Fajr prayers. So there's a huge clear difference already if you see historically Yazid and his life. And on top of that, just one thing I want to mention, if you really want to know, they say, you know, if you want to know who you are, look at the 5 closest friends to you. And you've said this example many times. Who was the closest friend to Yazid? A monkey. By the name of Qais. I'm not making this up.
Yeah,
and I don't want anyone to think that I'm joking. I really, genuinely want you with an open heart to go check everything that I'm saying about Yazid.
Yeah,
because you cannot take Yazid as your leader. Mustahil. When you have Abu Abdullah.
And we know of Yazid in his younger years, obviously in the younger years when Muawiyah was governor of Sham, if I'm not mistaken, when Umar ibn al-Khattab was Khalifa, Muawiyah was in Sham, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. Yazid in his younger years at the time was under the teacher who was a Christian preacher.
I think it was in the time of Uthman.
Was it time of Uthman? I may be wrong. But from what we understand, Yazid spent many of his younger years outside of the realms of Islam. And of course, in his late years, in these years when Muawiyah died, and obviously it was then the Khilafah was wrongfully put into the hands of Yazid. Even those people in governance at the time,
which by the way, at that time went against the treaty signed with Imam al-Hassan.
Correct, yeah. And there was so much revolt even internally that who's this guy? He's an idiot. His dad was a politician, although spiteful and, you know, all sorts of disgraceful things that Muawiyah did. But Yazid himself is an open idiot. This is what the common knowledge was. And of course, the real tactical, like the evil genius of Karbala, a lot of it was obviously orchestrated by Ibn Ziyad, and then from Kufa, and then on the ground in Karbala, Umar ibn Sa'ad and Shimr, and obviously a lot of the foot soldiers as well. But there's a chain and there's a hierarchy of complete levels of evil in different forms. I would also advise for anyone who's listening at home to check out a series we did on Ahlul Bayt TV with Father Christopher Clahesi a couple of years ago. I had the opportunity to speak with him, and he is an absolutely amazing speaker. For those who don't know him, inshallah, we'll get him onto the podcast one time. But he's a teacher of Shi'i studies in Arabic in the Vatican in Rome. And his primary focus is talking about Karbala and Imam Hussain. And he's done an in-depth biography and analysis of Sayyidah Fatima Zahra, Bibi Zainab alayhi salam. And of course, he does a lot of work on the enemies behind Karbala, pre, during, and post Karbala as well. Really, really good stuff. So search it. Christopher Clahesi is his name. Check it out on YouTube, and also his work online as well, his books and whatnot. But you know, this is the really important thing, because then you have two sides of the coin. Yeah. You have those who are Ahl al-Kisa, the Imam who was raised in the house of purity. His father was Ali ibn Abi Talib, and his mother was Fatima Zahra. And this is a man who was raised alongside Imam al-Hassan, Bibi Kulthum, and Bibi Zainab alayhim as-salam. And his life is underappreciated. Prior to Karbala, all of the things he did throughout his life. We mentioned on the podcast before, a lot of people always point to the one incident in his youth where he's doing wudu and he teaches an ummah how to do wudu with Imam Hassan. The Imam had years of khidmah and service to the ummah. And it's a shame that we only take heed of his actions at his death. Even his death teaches us lessons, but his life obviously teaches us many, many more. But you've got two sides of the coin. And obviously, like I said earlier, in this will to his brother Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, he says, "Oh, my brother, even if there's no refuge in this world, I will never ever give bay'ah to Yazid ibn Muawiyah." Which goes to show that Imam didn't care for his salvation in the dunya.
A man like me will never give allegiance to a man like Yazid. And it just shows you, and for someone to say that sort of statement, you really had to be raised under the arms of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we see that connection evidently in history everywhere. The relationship Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had with his grandson, his beloved grandson. He used to call Hussein his son, not his grandson. Waladi al-Hussein. He used to call him my own son. Hussein minni wa ana min Hussein. And the most beautiful saying I love about this is Ahabba Allah man ahabba Husayna. You know, that gives my heart so much peace, that I know God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can love me because I love Imam al-Hussein. How beautiful is that? Yeah. How beautiful is that? And you know, another thing that I find so amazing about Rasulullah and Imam al-Hussein, you know, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he used to go to the mosque and he used to deliver sermons, there were times during the sermons where he would get Imam al-Hussein and sit him on his lap and he would deliver. I think that's more than just love. That's him saying, truly, Hussein is from me and I am from Hussein. And it's telling everyone there, seeing this, you know, sitting down and seeing Abu Abdullah in the laps of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then eventually, you know, we see a place on Ashura on the 10th of Muharram where there's someone else sitting on the chest of Imam Hussain salamullahi alayh. Shimr bin al-Jawshan la'anatullahi alayh. There's a point where, you know, and this is a point where Sayyidah Zainab stands on the tell. You know, when you go to Karbala in Iraq, near the shrine of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, there's a point where it's called Tell al-Zainabi. This is the point that's known in history where she stood and she what happened to Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. You know, so this is not an easy thing for a sister to see, let alone the daughter of Amir al-Mu'mineen, let alone the granddaughter of Rasulullah, the daughter of Fatima al-Zahra, you know. And if it wasn't easy for her, and she saw beauty in this, she saw beauty in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from Karbala, how about us? You know, because I'm sure, Ahmed, if you read or hear or sit in a majlis like we have been, and many of us watching, listening to After Maghrib Podcast are in a majlis, or we've been to a majlis, or we're about to listen to a majlis, there's going to be a point during that lecture, before the eulogies, before you go do Martyrdom, before you go do Noha, before you start your Azadari, there's going to be Masa'ib where they're going to narrate, you know, certain tragedy on that day. They're going to dedicate a certain, you know, important figure that we take and learn lessons from in Karbala. What happens to the heart? I want to know, because Imam Hussain had the softest of hearts. And there's nothing that can soften a heart for us like the musibah of Abu Abdullah. Why is it important to cry for Imam Hussain?
You know, there's that saying, Imam Hussain alayhi salam gave his heart to Allah, and in return Allah gave millions of hearts to the Imam.
Salamullah.
And when one opens his heart to the Holy Imam alayhi salam, the heart softens and it finds an opportunity to receive all of the message and all of the guidance that the Holy Imam intended for us to receive. The tears that we shed for the I keep saying the Holy Await, the tears that we shed for the Holy Imam alayhi salam are tears which we should never underestimate its value and its importance. And there's dozens and dozens of a hadith. I was looking earlier at least 40 hadith. I'll mention one or two if you don't mind.
Please.
There's a hadith from the Holy Prophet Muhammad in Mustadrak al-Wasail, volume 10, page 318, where he says, surely there exists in the hearts of the mu'mineen, with respect to the martyrdom of Al-Hussein alayhi salam, a heat that never subsides. And you think about it, that when the Holy Prophet is saying that your heart will be full, your heart will be warm, when it comes to Al-Hussein alayhi salam, then your heart will be open to reformation. And of course, we know from Rasool al-Huquq, and of course in the Holy Quran, that the heart in Islam is the gateway towards connection and obedience to Allah SWT. So inshallah, we can think about this when we sit in the musibah. We should never ever underestimate the power of these nights, and especially the moments of musibah. Sayyidah Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha is inshallah sitting amongst us, and to be able to shed a fly's wing of a tear for the Imam.
They say a tear the size of the wing of a mosquito.
Correct, a mosquito, yeah.
Yeah.
And that small tear inshallah will be intercession for us.
Inshallah.
It will cool us on Yawm al-Qiyamah in the heat and with the nar, and inshallah that will act as an intercession for us. And let me just say one last thing. What I have found, at least on a personal level, is that as a man, crying in this day and age has become taboo, and it's sometimes even in other schools of Islam is seen as a form of weakness. Mourning a death is seen as weakness. Mourning a death for an extended period is weak. On the contrary, one should never ever stop crying for Imam Hussain. And shedding a tear for the Imam will give you masculinity. It will give you hope. And for me alone, if there's one thing that can bring me to tears, it's the Imam's story. So we have to take it seriously. There's an akhlaq and there's an etiquette that we must observe when sitting in masa'ib, and when we perform azadari in itself is I feel it's wajib on us. Mourning the Imam is wajib on us. There's a tendency to fall into the trap during the 10 nights of Muharram to become intellectuals and academics, and
it is.
But the ultimate aim of these 10 nights is what, Sayyid? It's mourning, it's grief. We talked about this. Inshallah, we will talk about this with one of our forthcoming guests. But there's a hadith from Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam where it said that from the first night of Muharram until the 10th eve, or the day of Ashura, he's seen to be in a state of huzn, in absolute grief, no state of joy or happiness, complete grief to the point of extreme sadness. And we think about it, there's many of us who at times will be in majalis and will be in a state of mourning, and then during the day we're in school or in work and we're our normal selves with our colleagues, and we don't even make an effort to explain why to our colleagues we are wearing black, if we even do that at work, or why we are not in a joyful mood like we usually are. I'm thinking about it already. We are recording this podcast obviously the night before Muharram begins, and I'm thinking about talking to my colleagues about it, how I'll portray this to my colleagues, because Imam Hussain is for all. He's not just for us, he's for all. Of course, his message was Tawheed in essence, but his method is for all. Absolutely.
It is. Imam Hussain is definitely for all. 110% he is for all, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he wants people to come to Islam, Islam is open for all.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, we see, the reason why I say Islam is for all, because I have seen so much conversions and reversions happen.
Yeah.
Where people come towards Islam, come towards the path of the Ahl al-Bayt through the martyrdom of Imam Hussain, because it's impossible for the rock not to cry.
Yeah.
If we can say, it rained blood from the sky, honestly, your heart, something happens to it. And mourning Imam al-Hussein is not just emotional, I think it's spiritual, because you feel some sort of connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A lot of people, they say, I'm just doing this for Imam Hussein. Ultimately, this is taking us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because sometimes we can say, some of the azadari or some of the mourning that we do are signs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a verse, I don't remember exactly on top of my head, but if we go back to our holy imams, they say Rahamallah man ahya amrana. May Allah have mercy on the ones who revive our teachings, or revive, what happened to us, revive, speak good of us, all of these things. And this is the same form as majalis, for example.
Yes.
When we hold a majlis for Imam Hussain, what are we doing? We are reviving their teachings.
Sahih.
We are reviving and reminding everyone, the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But ultimately, I think what's beautiful about Muharram and mourning is these tears. Like you said, people say, real men don't cry. No. Come to Karbala. Come to Karbala and you see the true men. Because you see men as men.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
110%. And, we know Imam Zain al-Abidin, Imam al-Sajjad, there's narrations that, after Karbala and after going to Sham and then after, leaving Yazid's palace and going back to, I think it was Medina.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, there was always a time where he will be with the public.
Yeah.
He'll be with the, the Muslims there around him. And whenever they come to the Imam, he would cry. Okay? So if the Imam is crying, why shouldn't we cry? And he says, I cry because, not just because my father was killed. I cry because my father was killed in the most brutal of way. And if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam cried for Imam al-Hussein years prior to his martyrdom, that's a sunnah. It's a sunnah to cry for Imam al-Hussein salamullahi alayhi. And what's more beautiful about these tears?
You're asking me?
I'm asking you.
You said something which I liked about spirituality, that the martyrdom of the Imam is spiritual. The thing is, the difference between a revolutionary and a reformer is what? A revolutionary comes with the intention to change, to free the physical shackles from people. A reformer comes, they conduct a revolution, and then they change free the shackles of people's minds and hearts. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was not just a revolutionary, he was a reformer. And we say that the Imam spiritually and politically reformed the deen of Allah SWT. And his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, they conducted then the intellectual reformation, al-Thawra Thaqafiyya. And when we talk about that, we understand that Karbala was a success in the sense that when the Holy Imam says, Islah ad-Din al-Rasul, the reformation of the religion of his grandfather, he had to do this. It was wajib on him. And he knew in that moment in time, my grandfather would have done this, my father would have done this. And of course, we know that if this is how one Imam acted, then all of the Imams in the same position would have done the same thing. Just because the later Imams or the early Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam or whoever we're discussing was not at Karbala and Imam Hussain was, does not mean that one Imam was braver than the other, or one was more politically inclined and one was more reserved. It doesn't work like that. The ultimate goal is Tawheed, and then the practice of it was the practice that the Rasool Allah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would have done himself. So the revolution of Karbala is one thing. The reformation of our hearts and minds, millions of people now, over 1,000 years later, is more important, I think.
Yeah.
Karbala is eternal. It's timeless.
Never ending.
Never ending. Literally.
Never ending love.
Ahsant. And there's no way. I find it really ignorant when people just pigeonhole Ashura into a political dispute, one of dozens of early Islamic battles that happened in the early days. Bro, they say, there's a historian, I forget her first name, her surname is Hazard, okay, or Hazard. She's like Jenny Hazard or something like that. It was very interesting what she said. She wrote a biography on the Holy Prophet Muhammad. They said the golden years of Islam came after the death. How can the golden years of Islam come after the death of Rasul when they killed his grandson 50 years later? And imagine all the obstacles which the Imam had to face. Imam Ali, Imam Hussain, and Imam Hussain alayhi salam. In the build-up, post the death of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, and in the build-up to Karbala, everything they had to face. And people dare say that these are the golden era of Islam.
Yeah.
It doesn't really make sense to me.
It doesn't. And, you know, just to add on to something here, you know, I came across a clip, a very, very short clip. It was about 9 or 10 minutes long, by a very famous, huge public figure from our brothers from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, you know, and he was touching on the tragedy and the killing of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And, you know, I was listening. I was like, you know what? Let me hear this. You know, the video got recommended to me on YouTube. Mufti Menk, I'll say it out there. You can watch it if you want. And I was like, you know what? Wow, okay, Mufti Menk is going to talk about Imam Hussain. I was, you know, fair enough, fair play. You know,
yeah.
Alhamdulillah, someone's speaking the truth, maybe. I don't know. But 9 minutes in, all he's talking about is fasting on Ashura.
Wow.
Okay? And the final, my point is, it was titled The Martyrdom, the Killing of Imam Hussain. And the final minute or two, which was 10 to 15% of the entire thing, he was like, you know, Imam al-Hussain, he went to Karbala, you know, there was a dispute, there was like a political thing going on, and he called the entire thing a fitna. And he goes, you know what, at the end of the day, he said, at the end of the day, Imam al-Hussain, he believes in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasool Allah, and the army that went against him believes in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasool Allah. And the army that went against him and killed Imam al-Hussain, the fact they believe in the kalima, Allah SWT might forgive them.
Wow.
That was shocking.
Wow.
Yani you could not mention the name. Number one, he didn't even mention that person by name. I'll mention him, Yazid ibn Muawiyah and co. You know, the entire party of shaitan. You know, Imam Hussain, alhamdulillah, he's from the party of Allah. Hezbollah. Yazid from Hezb al-Shaitan. Honestly. Honest to God, yeah. And these tears, the thing is, the moment they mention or narrate what happened to Imam al-Hussain, or the story of Ashura, or the story of Karbala, the entire crowd is going to break. Their hearts are going to shake. Because when you hear what happened to Imam al-Hussain, it is impossible, as a Muslim, as a man, as a human being, not to allow a single tear to go down your cheek. This is the fear. This is what they fear. We say what happened to Imam al-Hussain, we have nothing to gain. Honestly,
questions arise.
A lot of questions.
How did this happen? And what brought this?
And this is why I feel they stop at Imam al-Hussain at a very young age. Because the moment you continue to talk about Imam al-Hussein's life, as he gets older, what happens? Haqq and batil.
They stop at the point where the Holy Prophet died, when the Imam was at a young age. Imam was how old? 10 or so, when the Holy Prophet passed away. And at that point, the biography of Rasul ends when he dies, and nothing else matters. And Al-Hasan and Al-Hussain alayhim salam are known as the children.
Radiyallahu anhu.
Yeah, and this is why they are, you know, say the Shabab Ahl Jannah, because they are the youth and they were children when the Holy Prophet was. Bro, this is an injustice to the Imam. This is an injustice to the Ahlul Bayt. An injustice to the Ahlul Bayt is an injustice to the Quran, which goes symbiotically hand in hand with each other. And an injustice to either, if not both of these two entities, is an injustice to Allah SWT. And to say, you know, the final point I want to make, and just inshallah, like, you know, there's a lot in these coming nights. I know I really wanted to talk about how to approach these nights and whatnot. But there's one thing I really want to say. It hit me today, you know, I was listening to a lecture and by Sayyid Mehdi Madarisi. It was really, really cool. He mentioned a story from like 5-6 years ago. He said there's a NASA telescope, the Hubble something telescope, the most powerful telescope in the world today. Technology-wise, the most amazing. He said that the most famous photograph that this telescope has captured is a picture of 1,000 dots. Each dot, he says, doesn't represent a planet or a planetary system. It represents a galaxy. And each galaxy has 200 billion stars. So you have 1,000 dots with 200 billion stars within each dot being a galaxy. And those at NASA has said it's equivalent mathematically to, if you extend your arm and hold a needle at the end of your hand, that small needle is that picture. And the whole of the arm is what remains uncovered from the observable universe today. Now, let me pose this question to you. This is what we, in our small, humble minds, understand in this day and age. Now, amongst all of this, the creator of the universe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we know from a hadith, we know from the hadith of the Holy Prophet, the best of people are those who are most beneficent to the creator and his creations. The Holy Imam alayhi salam, he gave everything in servitude to the creator. And the creator had that special relationship with the Imam. He said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I would give you more, take more. When Ali Asghar alayhi salam had the arrow shot in his neck, he said, Ya Allah, even in this state, if I had more to give you, take from me. I'm here, I'm willing to sacrifice more. Take whatever you want from me. Take my life, take whatever you want. And you think about it, that this is true love. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know Dua Abu Hamza Thumali, that there is, we're told in the dua that Allah is so self-sufficient, He doesn't need Himself even. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is self-sufficient, He doesn't need the dua and worship from us. And He doesn't even need Karbala. Imam Hussain doesn't need to give his life for Allah's sustenance and Allah's existence. But what is important is that we understand that we need Allah. And Imam Hussain is not doing it for us in this day and age. He's doing it for Allah. Ultimately, the most important thing that we have to observe in these 10 nights and inshallah beyond in this season and inshallah in the coming months until next year is love from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tawheed and understanding of al-haq. If we create a connection between these three entities, love that Allah has given us, understanding the mission of tawheed and understanding the mission of haq, in my opinion, this is what I feel will allow us to grasp what the Imam was trying to do. All of that cliche stuff about fighting oppression, great, really cool if you want to talk academically to a modern day university student. But as Muslims, as Shia, we have to understand that, number one, he did it for God, and that's it. You know, there's no if, buts, and maybes. He did it for this. Yeah, he did it. He didn't want to give bay'ah to Yazid. But more than that, he didn't want to give bay'ah to Yazid because he knew he stood against everything godly. So my only request upon myself is that I take heed of this and I don't do an injustice to the grand occasion, which is Majalis al-Hussein alayhi salam. You know, I don't abuse the right and I don't take for granted the blessing and the status of being called a Shia of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. And inshallah we can live up to that. You know, it's like such a pressure, but like such a blessing to be in these days.
No, it's very true. And you know, as Shia, I think now, you know, we are in Muharram, and we have to remember, as much as we say Imam al-Hussein, he is our Imam. Truly, Imam Hussain is our Imam. And you know, if we were there and he was here, would we be the same as we are today? Because we have to factor in, you know, if we want to say we are from the Shia of Ali and his children, if we are from the Shia of Hussein, if we are on the path of Rasool Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, are we praying? If Imam Hussain was able to establish Salah in Karbala, he was able to, you know, still stay still with all his companions and, you know, ensuring Salah was done regardless of the arrows coming, regardless of the enemies charging, regardless of any of this, he still managed to do Salah. And I say this to myself. When I'm talking about Salah, I'm not telling anyone to go pray. I say this to myself first before I say it to anyone else. But if we are from the Shia of Hussein, Imam Hussein went to pray. If we are from the Shia of Hussein, what's our relationship with the Quran? Because we know that after Karbala, when Imam al-Hussein's head was raised on a spear and it was paraded from city to city, it was narrating. His blessed lips were still speaking and saying the holy words of the Quran. Imam al-Hussein was still uttering the noble Quran, even whilst his head is on a spear. So, as Shia, we have to, you know, make sure that Muharram is something more than just mourning and crying and lamenting and chest beating. Don't get me wrong, this chest, inshallah, we beat it until we die, because there was someone who sat on the chest of Imam Hussain. This is something we're never going to forget. But what's in our chest? Our heart. If we're beating our chest, is our hearts clear of arrogance? If we're beating our chest, is our hearts clear of ego? If we're beating our chest, is our hearts clear of hates? If we're beating our chest, is our hearts on the path of truth? These are so much questions I have to ask myself, and inshallah it's a reminder to everyone. That's more importantly, and something so sincere that I really want to say, is Fatima al-Zahra salamullahi alayha. You know, when we go to a majlis, she's there. She sees us walking in, and she sees us walking out. When we walk in and we sit down in a lecture and we hear the Messiah, when we walk out, let's stay the same. Let's not change. Last year we spoke about part-time Muslims. I don't know if you remember this episode we did where we titled the part-time Muslims. You know, we don't want to say we're better than anyone, but let's be more than just 10 nights Muslims. Because Fatima al-Zahra is watching, and we know Fatima's connection with Imam Hussain. Because when Rasulullah, I'll leave at this final point, when Rasulullah told Fatima alayhi salam what's going to happen to her son, she told him, you know, if you are saying, Rasulullah, she was talking to her father, if you are saying that people that claim to be from your ummah are the ones who are going to kill my son, who's going to mourn for him? Who's going to remember him? Who's going to cry over him? Who's going to hold majalis for him? All of these things. Do you know what Rasulullah told her? He said, Fatima, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will create Shia of Hussein who will mourn Hussein forever. And we see this clear everywhere, Ahmed, because you can go to any country in the world. You can go to all 7 continents. You see the flag of Labbaika Ya Hussein on top of almost every house. If not in the house, in the hearts of the believers. Assalamu alaikum ya Abu Abdullah.
Labbaika Ya Hussein. Say thank you so much. You are on fire today.
No, I am, and it's not I'm on fire because I'm angry.
Your heart, I know.
Today I saw the flag change.
Yeah.
And you know
it hits you.
When you watch the flag change, Habibi, that's it. It's finished.
It's finished.
There is no way like you can be normal.
I was watching the live stream as well, and in Karbala, and it just rips your heart to shreds. How we yearn to be in Karbala these nights. Inshallah, we're granted visitation.
Inshallah,
with a pure heart and with a willingness to change, with a willingness to mourn for the Imam and be able to serve the Imam of our time. For those who follow us on Instagram, you guys will know that we asked a question earlier today. By the time you listened to us a few days ago, asking why Karbala and Ashura remains relevant today. And I promised I'd give you guys a few shout outs. You can probably see on my phone, here we are, like so many, mashallah, responses. And it's only been maybe 3-4 hours since we put this out. I'm just going to read a couple and just give you guys an understanding why you think Karbala and Ashura is still relevant today. Rashid 695, to reflect between good and evil. Hakima Mahzain, because they represent the struggle and against oppression and tyranny. Muntazir B, Karbala gives us a framework to develop our communities against the fast-moving Western society. 10 lectures every year, but we need to take lessons about youth, marriage, hijabs, loyalty, etc. Sister Romina Hashmani, it resets our moral compass, reminds us of our purpose, softens our heart for change. The values shown by each of the personalities on the battlefield are guiding points for what we should be. If I asked why it isn't relevant, I wouldn't be able to answer. Its relevance is in our veins and it fuels us. There's hundreds here. Someone else says, without Imam Hussain and the tragedy of Karbala, we would have had the wrong version of Islam. Someone else says, drops of berries, because through the majlis, lectures, recitals, charities, blood donations, acts of services, justice will always be served. No matter how long, justice will fight till it reaches the righteous. And I'll just mention 1 or 2 more. Said maybe you've seen some you like. Have you got it open?
No, I just closed. I closed the app.
I'll mention 1 or 2 more because there's so many. Said Abdullah Naqib, good friend of ours. The echo of Imam Hussein's call should awaken us to prepare for Imam al-Mahdi. And one last one from Sha'il 110. Every day is Ashura, every land is Karbala. If Karbala wouldn't have happened, we wouldn't have After Maghrib I didn't know this. After Maghrib podcast today, and all of our lives would be very different from what we know. Ahsantum. Jazakallah khair. And thank you to everyone for all of your contributions. And inshallah, we learn together. We're on a journey of growth. And we just pray that these coming nights are nights of change and more than just reflection. Reflection is a starting point for change. Of course, we know how much reflection is spoken about with a view to being a trigger for change in our personal lives, a catalyst for growth in our personal and our spiritual lives. We mentioned earlier, we mentioned again, these are nights of spirituality and inshallah nights of mourning and grief for us all. Sayed, any last words before we wrap up?
Just hold on to Hussein.
Ahsan.
Honest to God, because Hussein is one of those ropes that you can hold on and lean on to take it towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you know, very famously, the Ahlul Bayt say, we are all the arcs of salvation.
Ahsan.
But the arc of Imam al-Hussein is wider and faster towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Inshallah, we're all aboard that arc, brothers and sisters. Thank you for tuning in, and we will be back with you in a few days, inshallah. Please remember us in your du'as if you have any opportunity. Sayyid's family, my own family, and inshallah that the whole team at Ahlul Bayt TV and after Maghrib are able to serve in the way we want to. Everyone here behind the scenes is working crazy hours to help with different majalis, especially in London, and you know, we ask Allah to reward them for all of their khidmah. Ilahi Ameen. But yeah, we will see you in a few days. Stay tuned. We'll speak soon. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.